Welcome back. I'm really excited to have Molly Carrott Taylor here today. She's the executive director of the Ships of the Sea Museum. Molly, tell us a little bit about the organization.
Yes. We are a small, I would say, boutique maritime museum in Savannah, Georgia. We are located in the downtown historic district. In addition to the William Scarborough house that we are situated in, a home from 1819, we also additionally own a huge garden, the largest private garden in the historic district of Savannah, that stretches a full city block and then some. We have our own parking lot, which as an executive director adds another really interesting wrinkle to the business model, and management and ripple effect and all kinds of things that happen in the museum world. So Ships of the Sea was founded in 1966 by a man named Mills B.E.E. Lane Jr. And Mills B. Lane Jr. was a banker from Valdosta who was ambitious and built a banking empire that went from Valdosta, which is a small city west of Savannah, to Savannah, eventually to Atlanta. He had a brother named Reamer Lane who named his first son, Mills B. Lane III. Well, when Mills Lane the Jr. had a son after that, he named his son Mills B. Lane IV. The museum's founded in 1966. It has a long and interesting career on Bay Street and River Street. It's a bluff of Savannah that Oglethorpe landed on to create the colony of Georgia. It was an ideal place for the colony, both from a maritime perspective, shipping, trade, as well as fortifications and protection from other intruding forces. The bluff of Savannah is still the most gorgeous, most historic, most interesting part of the city, of 150,000 people in the area and then 300,000 in the metro. The museum from 1966 until 1996 was sort of a renegade ragtag place. It was interesting. People who are, in their 50s today remember it. My consulting curator, Tanya Salmons, worked there in 1993 as a docent. It's a funny place. They used to shoot a cannon off when cargo ships would come by. The wife of Mills Lane Jr., she would wave a hanky at them as the ships went by. And if she wasn't there, she would ask the team to call her on the phone and tell her which ships were coming in. So it was really a family founded, very locally focused museum. And in 1996, well, actually earlier in the 90s, Mills Lane IV decides to move his dad's maritime museum into a more appropriate house, the Scarborough house. William Scarborough was the lead investor and president of the steamship Savannah Company. And it was at its peak in 1819 when the steamship Savannah leaves the Savannah port, christened by President Monroe, and makes its first transoceanic voyage. It is the first transoceanic voyage of any steamship. So picture a three-masted sailing ship with some paddle wheels on the side. A paddle wheeler existed at the time, but it had to hug the coast. If they got into open water, they were in deep trouble. The sailing ship, as we all know, can go across an ocean, and many had done that for hundreds and hundreds of years. But if the wind stops blowing, you stop moving. So Scarborough has this great idea to attach the paddle wheels and become a steamship. So he has a coal-fired engine in the middle of the ship, paddle wheels spinning on either side. They get across the ocean in 1 month's time. It took James Oglethorpe to colonize Georgia 2 months to get from England to Savannah. So they cut the time in half, which is really pretty radical. Many people may or may not know that there are hordes of ships named Savannah because Scarborough's invention was so impactful that everyone wants a ship named Savannah, including the nuclear ship Savannah that Eisenhower created during the Atoms for Peace program that was run on nuclear energy. The steamship Savannah really is important. The National Maritime Day is named as May 22nd because that was the day the steamship Savannah left Savannah's port for England.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yes, that was declared in 1933. Congress declares it. And so for the last almost 100 years, we have been celebrating May 22nd as National Maritime Day. Scarborough.
Wow. That's amazing. You have an amazing celebration coming up, I guess.
Totally. So it really is great. And we feel honored to interpret mainly Savannah's history and regional Southeast Georgia history, maritime history in the building. again, like I said, we're a boutique. It's very small. It's 2 floors plus a basement. And we're trying really to shake things up now and make the museum more of a destination. I started 2 years ago, as I said, and the generally cultural organizations in Savannah have had a loss in admission numbers over the last 10 years. And so we're trying to battle back and do some interesting things to get people in the door.
Wow, wow, that is just amazing. So let me ask you a little bit about you and how you came to be at the museum. I know you're not from Savannah, so how did you get there? Where did you start out from?
So I grew up in Kansas City, which is a very landlocked state, but my dad was a sailor. My family spends summers in northern Michigan in Harbor Springs. And so I grew up sailing, water skiing, being on the water every single summer. And then when I was in high school, went to summer school, a summer camp, 6-week summer camp. You had to go for 6 weeks, called Culver Summer Schools, based at Culver Military Academy in Culver, Indiana. And they had a 3-masted schooner. Bill Koch, additionally, one of the Koch brothers, had donated his mini Maxis, the sort of small test form America's Cup boats, to the summer camp. We had a huge fleet of lightnings, lasers, sunfish, catamarans, you name it, we had it, Hobie Cat, windsurfers. And so I did a ton of sailing for all 3 summers of high school at Culver. Then I got to college and I was a competitive sailor at Connecticut College, but I also studied art history, which I loved. I sat in my first dark room with the slide projector whirring behind me, showing beautiful images on the screen, and fell madly in love. So I went to New York City, worked at the Metropolitan Museum for 5 years, got a master's degree at Columbia in arts administration, ostensibly museum management. I knew I didn't want to be a curator, but I loved the problem-solving side of museums. So was in the museum industry for 25 years, the Met, Lower Manhattan Development Corporation that rebuilt the World Trade Center site, left there to go to the Drawing Center in Soho, small non-collecting museum. We had a baby, and we both, my husband and I, said we've had enough in New York. So we moved to Savannah, Georgia. Then I have 7 years as deputy director and director of development at Telfair Museums, the 3-site large art museum here in Savannah. COVID hits, my job's eliminated. And so I did 3 years of nonprofit and for-profit consulting on business development strategies, fundraising, general nonprofit management, how to solve things that people were having trouble with. And one of my clients was Ships of the Sea. And they had this goal to build an education building. So Mills Lane the Fourth moves the museum from Bay Street, River Street to the Scarborough House in 1996. Everything is put here. They reopened in 97. And so we've been here for nearly 30 years. And Mills said, Scarborough House is only so big. I really want a indoor lecture facility that can be adjacent to the museum and that would fill out the rest of the street front that faces the center of the city. We're on the very western edge of the downtown historic district. And so they've had this thing percolating in the background for 30 years, and Mills died in 2001. His widowed partner, Gary Arthur, has carried on the torch, and they got drawings made in 2001 of us, hypothetically, what this building might look like. So they said, we need a real fundraiser to do this job. And, you're our fundraising consultant right now. How about you become our executive director and you really implement and see where we can go with this? So I, took the pulse and did some math and figured this is probably worth it. So here I am. 2 years later, it's been a wild ride, but tons of fun. And we have an awesome team that is all pulling in the same direction and helping to, use creative problem solving to grow the museum and its reputation. And ideally, we might build this building. We're not quite there yet, because to go from a museum that has no members, no fundraising program, they took donations, but it was like a cash box and you could go on PayPal on the website. That was it. So
Yeah,
in 2
yeah.
years' time, we've come a long way.
That's
So
amazing. That's amazing. So, tell me, I would like to know a little bit more about your master's program in arts administration and how
yeah.
that prepared you for this work, and also for your work with the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation.
Sure. So, I was living in New York already, so I really considered Columbia or NYU. Both have exceptional, both performing arts and visual arts, um, museum administration, programs. And so Columbia's appealed to me more. Everyone, I have a background also in ballet, so the performing arts is not foreign to me, but I really wanted to lean more into my museum, my love of museums and art history. So the program is incredibly diverse. You take a wide range of classes that all sort of fit together to create a museum administration. So you take 2 art law classes, you take 6 business classes, you take some fundraising classes, you take organizational development classes, and in the end, you end up with this very well-rounded background of business, so to speak, so that you could join an administration of any performing arts institutions or visual arts institution and really hit the ground running. Our professors had important jobs at a whole host of different museums across New York City. So we were learning practical experience from people who had been in the trenches doing it for a long time. It was a great experience for me. And I worked part-time at the Met in the registrar's office assigning accession numbers during my first year of school, because it was a full-time program, but I still had some time I needed to make some money. And then the second year I worked for my program, coordinating the alumni and students, hosting job fairs and connecting people with open opportunities. So when I got out, I really was ambitious. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to make some money. The Met was an awesome place to work, but when I started there in 1999, my choices, I had 2 jobs I was considering. One was the Met for $24,000 a year, and the other was MoMA in the chairman's office for like $22,000 a year. And I chose the Met job because I needed more money, because it was incredibly cheap. Like that was not enough to live on.
Oh my
So
God.
when I finished my master's degree, I was like, I really want, a serious paying job. Well, the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation was hiring Anita Contini, who runs Bloomberg Foundation's visual arts programming and lots of other stuff. She was running the department at the LMDC, managing the arts on the World Trade Center site. And then the intention when she left, right when I started, was to give away grants that would uplift all of Lower Manhattan, because really the destruction of the World Trade Center had impacted the entire neighborhood negatively. And there were 3 of us at the time when I started working on arts and culture. Anita then left to go found Bloomberg Philanthropies. And there were 2 of us remaining. Amy Weiser, who worked for the 9/11 Foundation for a long time after being at LMDC, and now does really exciting stuff, strategic thinking at Dia Beacon and other visual arts organizations in New England. So it was the 2 of us managing everything. When Amy left, it was me managing a whole host of other LMDC employees who were managing these arts and cultural projects. So we gave away $27 million to 65 nonprofit organizations that either were presently south of Houston Street or planning to move south of Houston Street. And the projects ranged from $1 million for the new museum to Henry Street Settlement, which does lots of kids programs and after school activities, getting them like a black box theater. Art in General got a grant. They're a small non-collecting visual art space just south of Canal Street now. And it was amazing helping these people navigate HUD guidelines for using the grants, because it was a federal granting organization. So Amy and I had to really, create the process and help them through receiving the funding to do this work. It was fantastic. So that was a great next stepping stone, but it was like working in dog years. So I stayed 2 years and the projects were all winding down. And after that, I got a sort of dispensation permission to work for the Drawing Center, which was supposed to get a $10 million grant to move onto the World Trade Center site. There were 4 nonprofits slated to be there: the Joyce Foundation for Dance, the Signature Theater, which does plays, the Drawing Center, which is visual arts, and something called the International Freedom Center, which was a newly created nonprofit that would discuss freedom in America, in the globe. All of that got scrapped up, sadly, and none of them are there, but they all have gotten some kind of, secondary prize to continue to do what they're doing and participate on the World Trade Center site. So the Drawing Center renovated their space on Wooster Street, and I worked for them, managing some of those grants, Rockefeller Brothers grants. They had a lot of other money that the LMDC helped them use their funding to leverage. So it was great. It was, a fun post-grad experience. And then, of course, having a baby slammed the brakes on all of it a little bit, but
it does.
Special in its own way.
Yeah, it does. It does. It's so that is amazing. So then, did you take any, I'm just curious, and we don't have to include this part. Did you take any time off when you had kids, or were you did you go right to Telfair? Did you dive right in and you moved to Savannah?
So I was working at the Drawing Center. I had been there like 4 months when we got pregnant. And so I took my maternity leave. I started in May, took the maternity leave in February. I took 3 months because you don't get that time back with your child. And I think I would encourage any woman thinking about kids or how to manage your job, just take the time. No one will miss you. They'll get through it, and you'll be happy because you've rested and had this bonding moment with your baby. So I went back to work, and my husband was commuting to Washington, D.C. to work for the National Gallery of Art at their Center for Advanced Study in the Visual Arts, known as CASVA. And it was too much. Him going to DC, us with this brand new baby, me going from the Upper East Side down to Soho every day. It was tough. So Jeff got a job at Savannah College of Art and Design here in Savannah as the chair of art history. He has both an architecture degree and an architectural history degree, design-based from the Graduate School of Design at Harvard. And so he had this he spent 5 years at the Metropolitan Museum as well, which is where we met. And he cataloged all of their architectural treatises, prints, and drawings in the drawings and prints department. So we both had fabulous moments at the Met and wouldn't trade it for anything. It was great. But the time had come to leave, and Savannah is a great landing space. So we got here. I took 4 years off. We had a second child. We have 2 boys now who are 17 and 14 and 3/4. And it was nice to have 4 years off. But when our younger one was 2, I thought, okay, I am not a homeschooling mom. I do not want to, I love my kids, but I'm a working mom. I want to be in the trenches doing something fun and contributing to my community. So that was when I started consulting to Telfair. I worked on 2 big projects for 1 year. And then my boss, Lisa Grove, who's now the director of strategy at the Legion of Honor in San Francisco, she said, okay, you can come on full-time as director of development, or I've got to let you go. And I was like, great, I'll take the job. So I was director of development for 4 years and then deputy director for 3. And it was a great 7 years. We had tons of fun. It's a lovely little art museum with 2 historic houses. One of them, the Owens Thomas House, is built by the same man in 1819 who built the Scarborough House. He did 6 different properties in that same 2-year period, 1819, 1820. And they're very special. They're some of the oldest and most monumental of that era, Regency architecture in Savannah. So, it was good to take a break, but I've had a great career. I think my kids are proud of me because I do something different. I don't just stay home. Everyone does it the way they need to, but it was nice.
Yeah, that's great. So if I could ask you for a second about development. Mm-hmm. I know more museum directors who were heads of development than I can shake a stick at. Having been a director of development for NMHS, I'm very interested in it. How closely allied is the skill of fundraising and development, which is not just fundraising, it's actually developing people, their interest and their, bringing them on. Talk about, does the job of development ever end for a museum director?
No, for better or worse. And the funny thing is I really am a natural fundraiser. sometimes I even call myself a salesperson because it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'm always selling my museum, whether that was past jobs or the present job. And I've told the board that, if I go to the grocery store and I run into a donor, I still am on. I've got to look the part and walk the walk. And I don't mind doing that. I like it, frankly. My kids used to say that I knew too many people and it took too long to get to through the grocery store because I had to talk to people. The cultivation of donors is one of the most critical parts of any executive director's job, because most people who want to give you money want to be a partner or an affiliate with the top of the pyramid. They want to talk to the people who are in charge, who are making decisions. What are they thinking? What's their vision? What's going to happen next year? What else can I be a part of? And to really dig down into that, Chips of the Sea had a fundraising event 2 weeks ago on March 14th. It was our very first fundraising dinner. As I said, we didn't raise any money until I arrived in March of 2023. So this has been a long, hard turning of the ship around to a different direction with the board's blessing and command. So we hosted the dinner. It was expensive for Savannah. It was maybe not the most expensive. The Art Telfair's gala tickets are $1,500 per person. This was a $400 per person ticket. Many of our board members thought, whoa, that's a lot. Maybe we've done too much too fast. And I said, no, it'll be fine. It was an intimate dinner for 70 people. We have a beautiful maple grove on the north part of our site, and it has 20 maple trees in 4 lines east to west and 5 lines north to south. And they're trident maples, so that they have a beautiful orange red color in the fall, and then suddenly, boom, all the leaves fall down and it's bare sticks for sort of 3 months. We have in-ground lighting in that grove, and we have the best AstroTurf on the southeast coast. So it's always green. It always looks amazing. And we put winding tables in between, sort of snaking tables, 3 lines of snaking tables in between the trees for our guests of 70. People didn't want to leave. We had this one woman whose brother is a real big supporter of the museum. She said, I just don't want to go home. I'm having too much fun. And it was a great group of people. We had warehousing and logistics people. We had historians. We had professors. We had wealthy people, not wealthy people, writers, you name it, we had it. Lawyers, all different variety. People who own steel mills. Each one of them found a group within their little winding niche of the table that they sort of fell in love with, either knew them already or found a new relationship that they were excited about. The food was amazing. It was sailor-inspired food. We had sort of salted fish. We had soup. We had both a spring seafood bouillabaisse as well as a jambalaya that had some sausage and beans and things in it. But you had to eat all of it out of one bowl. You got one set of silverware. We tried to be very, very maritime and authentic in what we were doing. And additionally, we had an auction that was selling 2 types of art. We had engaged with 20 artists in August to prepare for this March event, and they created either ceramic objects, small ceramic objects that were the decoration in the middle of the table, or they created fiber objects that were the entertainment around the garden. All of it was sailor inspired. All of it had some kind of oceanic link. Many of the fiber pieces were crocheted using traditional sailor knots. One of them that 4 donors ended up buying for the museum as sort of a surprise that night is called the Seven Sisters, named after the constellation of the Seven Sisters. Seven Sisters were the daughters of Atlas, who held the world up, and Pleiade, who was an oceanid protector of sailing and sailors. The 2 of them have 7 daughters. The daughters are turned into doves by Zeus and then into stars to protect them from Orion the hunter. So it was 7 Josephine knotted lines of fisherman's rope that was this wonderful man, Frank Dubberly, who was a shrimper on the south side of Savannah and died in the fall. It was his rope that she used to create this piece. I mean, everything couldn't have been been more maritime infused and really fantastic. My thanks that evening all had to do with using narrative maritime puns to thank people, the leading light of the event, things like that. So it really was special, and it just reinforces even more that fundraising and being an executive director is an intertwined piece. You cannot separate the two. If you can't do both, it might not be a great idea to take the job. I do think it's really fun. Getting to know people is something I love to do. Connecting people is something I love, and trying to, give people a reason to support what we're doing here. And ostensibly, education was the fundraising goal. We let 2,500 kids in last year for free, and we're trying to do it again and increase that number this year. So.
That is phenomenal. I do have to say, I'm just going to say one thing that I always have to say to people who resist the role of development. And I say, development is not about asking for money. And people are like, oh, I don't like to ask for money. I don't like that. And I'm like, it's not about asking for money. It's about helping people realize, things about themselves and helping them connect and understand their organization.
That's exactly right.
So now, let me ask you a little bit about some of the exhibitions you put on recently and what you have in the pipeline, because I know that your job is deciding what gets greenlit.
Yeah. So the current exhibition is something that we are incredibly proud of. It's called Sea of Ink, Savannah Maritime Tattoos. And essentially it happened because I was getting my haircut summer of 2023, and my hairdresser said, oh, did I show you my new scrimshaw tattoo? And I thought, oh my God, what? We have a fabulous case of scrimshaw at the museum. She loves this museum. She's a very hip, edgy, she has platinum and black hair, two-tone, is gorgeous and always looks like $1 million, but she's gotten everything at a vintage store. So she shows me her right forearm, and indeed she has a piece of a line drawing that was on a corset bone from a whale jaw, not an actual baleen whale tooth, but the white whale jaw that is carved into a corset stay. And it had 3 images on it. And the bottom one was this vase with overflowing floral coming out of the top. And I said to myself, that's really wonderful and weird. Who else in Savannah has a maritime tattoo? So I started looking around. And I got to November, my sister came to town. We went to dinner, and the guy who was serving us had waves coming out of the bottom of his short sleeve shirt. And I said, oh, do you happen to have a maritime tattoo? And he said, yes, I used to be in the Navy. And he pulls up his shirt, and he's got this fabulous, square rigged schooner on the arm and on his leg. He has a Sailor Jerry tattoo, which is a cartoon looking guy that is well known among the tattoo industry. And he's got his rucksack on one side and his discharge papers from the Navy in his other hand. And he's running to get out of the Navy as quick as possible. So we keep going. My curator and I start stalking people in the grocery store, tattooed people especially, and saying, oh, do you have a maritime tattoo under there? And it really became a fabulous grassroots exhibition that we created. And then we got 2 photographers. One teaches at SCAD and one came from SCAD and is an incredibly successful commercial photographer. Tom Sanders photographed all of the tattooed people. And Mike Schalk photographed the tattoo artists in town. And they're on 2 layers of our atrium. We have this one atrium space in the middle of the building that is our only rotating exhibition space. And it looks amazing. It is a painted, marbleized space to harken back to 1819 and what the decor might have been then, filled with contemporary people showing their tattoos. It is marvelous. And then the opposite side downstairs it's a wall of 28 portraits. And then the other side has a fishing net with details of their tattoos hanging from it by paper clips or by clothespin, sorry. So that was fabulous. And in a way, it was a little bit the unconventional way of trying to announce to Savannah and anybody that wants to pay attention in the tourism industry that Ships of the Sea is doing something new. We are contemporary. We are hot. We are wanting to do something that matters to the population in town today. And the next exhibition that will be up through September 1st of 2025. It'll come down on Labor Day. And the next exhibition is work by Rob Strati, Strati, and he does amazing things with broken plates. So picture a square piece of paper, someone breaks a plate, he puts the shards in generally the same area that they might have been, and then he extrudes the design with using a ballpoint pen to illustrate other things that might have been hiding in the plate that you couldn't see. Most of them include a maritime reference, a ship, a bird, water. He really is obsessed with sails of ships, maritime stories. He's not a sailor, but his son is taking sailing. And so he tries to tag along and learn a little bit, even though this is now his newfound livelihood. And he's fantastic. And so we've had a number of meetings. He came to town in November to see what we're doing here. And it's going to be a great show. So that runs late September through April. And after that, we're thinking about illustrators to fill the 4 long walls in our atrium. Each one will take a ship that is important to Savannah's history and illustrate it in contemporary, what is that called? Comic book fashion.
Comic fashion, sure. Wow.
After that, we have our designs on a garden exhibition where a man named Mike Gibson out of Columbia, South Carolina, will carve bushes in our garden into maritime themed bushes, topiary.
Wow.
I mean, we're trying to shake it up. And when you have the largest private garden in Savannah, you should be doing something in the garden. So it's been exciting to try and think outside the box and do some new and different things.
So if I could ask you, what do you feel, what are some distinct advantages you have by having a smaller museum, by having the staff you have? What is particularly appealing about your current situation?
So an exhibition I didn't mention that we put up over the summer was called Waves of Wonder, and it was all the Georgia Sea Grant artists. They have had 11 in 3 years that have received grants from Georgia to do ocean-related things. We were able to pivot and put something up because we're small. We didn't have, we were just going to either leave it blank. We thought about leaving the exhibition prior up, which was paintings that are lovely. They're like low country cargo ship oceanscapes. But it didn't seem quite catchy or interesting enough, renegade enough. And so our curator, Tanya, said, this is turning into a show. How about we do it? And I said, great, let's do it. So we put up this 3-month show that I thought was fantastic. It was very diverse. It included maritime archaeology, ceramic art, jewelry art, a mobile piece that whipped around in our staircase where there was a wall that people wouldn't get hit. It was really different. And because we're small, we can sort of turn on a dime. And it usually, so far it's worked out, knock on wood. The Sea of Ink exhibition was supposed to close in May, and we were trying to get a curatorial assistant to do a summer show as sort of her learning experience. And then we just realized it was going to take too long. Not that she was slow, but just that for her to create a show from scratch on Mary Musgrove, who was arguably the first minority women-owned business in Georgia. She owned the Trading Post before Oglethorpe got here in 1733. It was challenging. There were archaeological issues and where the stuff was and how we were going to get it. And so we scrapped that and just extended the Sea of Ink show. Again, like we can do that because we don't have anything else hot and heavy breathing down our neck to come slide into the next slot. And our Rob Strati was glad to have a few more months to work on his stuff for our show. It's been good. And,
that's really amazing. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, I would say that the fundraising dinner was a lot of work for 11 people. But again, because we're small, everybody talks to each other. We all sort of know what we're doing and working on. Oh, can you do this? Oh, you're busy. So-and-so will take care of that. But it's been great. I think there are far more positives to the small staff than negatives.
Okay. Wow. Now, one thing I was struck by in that description was you were talking about your internal development of staff, where you are asking younger curators to develop, shows themselves. Talk about the importance of that, if you can, for a moment.
So I firmly believe, and this my husband does too, and this is something we talk about at home because we're both in the arts, and so we do a lot of business shop talk at the dinner table. I personally think everyone has something that they want to develop, whether they know it or not, and working in a job allows you the opportunity to sort of lean into that. And Jax Ellis, our curatorial assistant, She's 24, finished at Bryn Mawr 2 years ago, and had limited experience and wanted to get some. So we were able to train her as a registrar, give her data entry opportunities on our collections management software. She helped tremendously with our event. She's rearranged and troubleshot our storage systems, which are not great. She has, answers the phone, done a million different things. And she really, I think, was curious if curatorial work was something she wanted to do. And we said, great, let's create a situation where you can do the summer show, and we'll work towards a few milestones to investigate and see what kind of topics might be good for you. And then you can decide, and we'll try and get the show mounted. And it was a great process. I think she was very happy about it. We did a 9-week lecture series at our Senior Citizens Center. They have a thing called the Learning Center where all different kinds of lectures happen 4 times a year. So we were the winter slot, one of the winter slots, and we had 9 lecture opportunities. Jax did 2 of them, and one was on Mary Musgrove. So she took the research that she had already done and some of the artifact analysis and turned it into a great 1-hour lecture. What 24-year-old gets to lecture to, 50 senior citizens? I think it was amazing. That was her first one. The second one she did was on the Savannah Shipbuilding Company, which was developed during World War II to create 88 Liberty ships on the east side of Savannah. We have a number of objects related to that in our collection. And so she did a deep dive and came up with just fabulous stories about women, stories about African-American people, disabled people, farmers who had come to the big city to get a job and who worked and made more and had vacation for the first time in their whole lives. So that was her second one. And it really was special. And we have enjoyed developing her and speaking openly about, what is she having fun with? What are the hurdles? And trying to hone her as a worker. I think all of us have it in our best interest to do that for the next generation. And it's been really fun.
Yeah, that's really, really amazing to hear. And that's a great practice. Now, if I could ask you another question about your storage, because you mentioned that when you come into an organization, frequently you have to rebuild from the bottom up. And storage for museums is often one of the biggest ticket items that is like repairing your basement. Nobody gets to see it. It's not exciting. And donors don't necessarily connect with it. Just talk about your storage.
So all the offices are in the basement, ground level, the garden level of the Scarborough house. And there is the library where I'm sitting right now has 3 closets. They are legit closets. They are 2 of them flank an old fireplace that probably was used for cooking in the 1800s by the Scarborough family and their enslaved servants, because they did own servants, enslaved people. So the 3 closets, one of them is like a full-on walk-in closet. The 2 on either side of the fireplace are just very wide with shelves. They don't lock. I mean, it couldn't get worse. And when I got here, they were jammed full of stuff. If you had wanted to find something, you wouldn't have been able to do it. So Jax has taken everything out. We have a dining room table basically that I'm sitting at, and the dining room table was filled with stuff. We had things on chairs. We had things everywhere. She created some order, and then she repopulated the closets, rearranged them based on themes, works on paper, physical objects, maritime objects, big, little. They all have a different home. Things are elevated off of the floor. They had a flood down here that did injure some things, some, artifacts and important pieces. So we've gotten everything off the floor. We have hung some artwork on the little bit of wall that we have here. We've rearranged some of the library. We had a fabulous library sciences intern last summer from Simmons College who started a little project in the library. Mainly his main project was archiving the documents in my office, which fill up 3 huge filing cabinets. We just don't have enough space for what we're doing here. So the first round has happened. My hope is that we will get some legit storage through this process. there's some closets upstairs in the galleries that I would love to turn into storage facilities like that are in the Metropolitan Museum's new British area. They're basically plexiglass boxes, and you have tons of objects in there, and they're hanging off of like little stems mounted into more plexi bases that run throughout the middle of the cases. And so you can see objects 360 degrees around. You see adjacencies that are really wonderful that you might not realize otherwise. So I have like 3 closets in mind that I would like to put plexi storage in that's, lockable. People could look at it. You could open these beautiful curved doors that fit into curved walls within the museum, open the curved door and see all kinds of wonderful maritime artifacts within. So
wow,
that's where we are. I've got visions. The reality is kind of sad. Luckily, the library does lock, and there are only 2 people that have the key, me included. And so it is safe. It's just not ideal. Sadly.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're trying to amend the situation, because it is a crisis with many museums, because especially as many artifact donors are giving ever more objects to museums, they are having a harder and harder time taking care of them.
It's true. Yeah.
So yeah, is there anything that we have not discussed that you'd like to talk about the museum, or about running a museum in Savannah, or your career that I haven't asked about?
So I would say that this job, more than anything that I've had, the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation was close, but it's been an opportunity to test the waters in new places and in new ways. And running a museum is far more complicated than I ever thought. My former boss, Lisa Grove at Telfair, who's now in San Francisco, she said to me, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea. You can cut your teeth on an executive directorship and see what it's like." And it truly has been cutting my teeth. Paying bills, managing people, managing contractors. We're a small staff, so we have a ton of contractors. We have a landscape management company that we pay over $6,000 a month to manage the garden. Well, if they're not doing their job, who's paying attention? I have to go pay attention to flowers, in addition to paying attention to maritime stories, interpreters who are talking to the public. We have a tremendous number of weddings that happen 6 months of the year, 3 in the fall, 3 months in the fall, 3 months in the spring. It's about 27 weddings, probably 6 nonprofit events and 2 corporate events. And it happens across the entire site. And so you have to manage all of that. Did our bartenders show up on time? Do we have enough alcohol ordered? There was a transition in the fall of 2023 where I was ordering the alcohol, and it was not fun. It was complicated. You have to do inventories. The audit for a small place like this was so onerous because I was the one trying to find the invoices, because I'm the one paying them. So I know where they are. We've gotten some fabulous digital systems created, QuickBooks Online, Build.com, different things that fit into that new fundraising software that we used for our event that we're probably going to switch to full time. It is so complicated. And so you want to try and create efficiencies and get help when you need it in order to do a faster, better job. But it is a lot of work. It's been fun. It's been really interesting and a lot of fun.
That is really amazing. Well, I can't thank you enough for your time. I have so many other questions I'd like to ask you, and so many things we could talk about, but we don't need to do it now. And, I think I'm going to cut all of that and just say, Molly Carrott Taylor, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today and to discuss so many of these things.
It was so much fun. It was great to see you, Nick, and I can't wait to see you next week at the conference.